One who is philosophically inclined, nalabhyate, is not obtained. Yat what? Brahmatam, wandering. Upari adaha, from top to bottom. Tat, that. Labhyate, can be obtained. Dukkhavat, like the miseries. Anyataha, as a result of previous work. Sukham, sense enjoyment. Kalena, in course of time. Sarvatra, everywhere. Gabhira, subtle. Ramhasa, progress. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Translation. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time. Just as in course of time, we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. Translation with repetition. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end is not obtainable even by wandering from topmost planet down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time. Just as in course of time, we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Every man everywhere is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. Some men are busy engaged in trade, industry, economic development, political supremacy, etc. And some of them are engaged in fruitive work to become happy in the next life by attaining higher planets. It is said that on the moon, the inhabitants are fit for greater sense enjoyment by drinking somarasa, and the Pitraloka is obtained by good charitable work. So there are various programs for sense enjoyment, either during this life or in the life after death. Some are trying to reach the moon or other planets by some mechanical arrangement, for they are very anxious to get into such planets without doing good work, but it is not to happen. By the law of the Supreme, different places are meant for different grades of living beings according to the work they have performed. By good work only, as prescribed in the scriptures, can one obtain birth in a good family, opulence, good education, and good bodily features. We see also that even in this life, one obtains a good education or money by good work. Similarly, in our next birth, we get such desirable positions only by good work. Otherwise, it would not so happen that two persons born in the same place at the same time are seen differently placed according to previous work. But all such material positions are impermanent. The positions in the topmost Brahmaloka and in the lowest Patala are also changeable according to our own work. The philosophically inclined person must not be tempted by such changeable positions. He should try to get into the permanent life of bliss and knowledge, where he will not be forced to come back again to the miserable material world, either in this or that planet. Miseries and mixed happiness are two features of material life, and they are obtained in Brahmaloka and in other lokas also. They are obtained in the life of the demigods and also in the life of the dogs and hogs. The miseries and mixed happiness of all living beings are only of different degree and quality. But no one is free from the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. Similarly, everyone has his destined happiness also. No one can get more or less of these things simply by personal endeavors. Even if they are obtained, they can be lost again. One should not therefore waste time with these filthy things. One should only endeavor to go back to Godhead. That should be the mission of everyone's life. Thus ends the wonderful transcendental Bhaktivedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So, as I think I mentioned in the last class, these three verses, 1.5.17, 18, and 19, are something which we should always remember. No matter in what condition of our life we are in, no matter in what situations we are put into. Because these are tremendous source of inspiration. And before understanding this verse even further and seeing how these are so great sources of inspiration, one thing to keep in mind is that this conversation is happening between Narada Muni and Vyasa. Sometimes when we read some scriptures or some portions of the scriptures, we take it not so personally. We really, we just see it as a text. We see that this is some kind of information shared in first canto, 5th chapter. Actually, this is a dialogue. This is a dialogue which is happening between Narada Muni and Vyasa, not ordinary people. And when two people are conversing, they have their feelings, they have their emotions, they have their consciousness behind that. It's a conversation which is happening. And the background of this conversation is Vyasa is despondent. He's unhappy. He's feeling a sense of incompleteness, and not something which is ordinarily felt by many of us in our lives. This is something after having written volumes of Vedic literatures, having accomplished something which is almost unheard of. Vedas, he divided, he wrote the 180 Upanishads, he wrote Itihasas like Mahabharata, he wrote the 18 Puranas, he wrote the Brahma Sutras, yet he is despondent. And very, very mysteriously, the Lord guides. Sometimes when a person is despondent and really looking for some, searching after the absolute truth, the Lord in heart guides a transcendental personality like spiritual master to appear. And as in this case, Narada Muni appears and he's addressing. And these verses are so important. Every word in this purport is important. Every single commas, full stop, semicolons are important to that extent. So let us understand, we have always limitation of time. I'm thinking maybe we can have this class again one more time in the next Sunday, because this is so important to know. Let's understand this verse, why it is so important, what is so beautiful about this verse. Because these are, as I said, understand the background. It is Narada Muni instructing to Vedavyas. And the idea behind this conversation is general well-being of common mass of people like us, who are going to be born in Kali Yuga and who are going to go through so many miserable situations, so many anxieties, so many difficulties. Keeping that in mind, when these verses, when this out of great compassion, when they're trying to see how we can help, how these people who are going to be born in this Kali Yuga, who have got so many limitations, short lives, they're manda, they're lazy, they're disturbed, they're misguided, intelligence is low. How do we help them? And in that course of their thinking, in that course of their conversation, Narada Muni is sharing, Vedavyas, what did you do? Jugupsitam. You have described so many things, but all this act is condemnable, because in the name of Vedic religion, in the name of dharma, you have asked people to indulge in sense gratification. They will take it as an endorsement and get indulged in that, because swabhava raktasya, they are naturally inclined for sense gratification. And this verse, it comes after, we have spoken the previous verse, which is another great, wonderful verse that we had last time. The verse was, one second, I just don't have it right now in front of me. The verse was, Tyaktva sodharmam charanam bhujam hare, bhajan apakpo pathet tato yadi, yatra kova bhadram abhudamushya kim, kovartha to bhajatam sodharmata. It's in that verse, and the translation was, one who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. Very powerful instructions, Narada Muni. He's telling it to Vedavyas, what is the importance of being engaged in devotional service, and how there is no loss, absolutely no loss, even if one is engaged for a very small fraction of time in his life. And for some reasons, he's not able to take it up. Whereas somebody who doesn't take up to this process of Krishna consciousness or devotional service and does all other occupational duties to the best of his ability, what is the gain? And in continuation of that, this verse is telling, Tasyeva heto. Tasyeva is for that purpose. Which purpose? Which is mentioned in that. That one should be engaged in devotional service. Tasyeva heto prayateta kovido. Prayateta, prayatna. Prayatna is to endeavor. So one should always endeavor for that purpose. Which purpose? Tasyeva heto prayateta kovido. Who should endeavor? First question is, who should endeavor? Kovida is a very important word. It means, as Prabhupada has translated here, as intelligent, one who is philosophically inclined. One who is philosophically inclined is what Prabhupada is, what word meaning he is given. But in the translation, Prabhupada is writing persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined. This word is used even earlier in Bhagavatam and many other places. You'll find very, very important word, because not everybody can do this. That is why Bhagavatam is specifying tasyeva heto, heto for that cause. Which cause? Which we just spoke before, 1.5.17. In that verse, it is mentioned that one should be engaged in devotional service. So tasyeva heto prayateta kovida, one who's intelligent, who's philosophically inclined, must endeavor for that cause. And the word kovido is also used, if you want to see reference 1.2.15, there in Bhagavatam, it mentions, Yad anudhyashina yuktaha karma granthi nibandhanam chindanti kovidas tasya kona kuryat katharati. So, Yad anudhyasina yukta, with the sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work, karma, by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to this message? Anudhyasina yukta, remembering the Lord. Remembrance of the Lord is like that sharp sword which can cut the binding knots of material engagement, material attachment. And who does that? Intelligent men. Kovidaha. Chindanti kovidas tasya kona kuryat katharati. So that kuryat. tasyaiva heta prayateto kovido na labhyate yad brahmatam upari adaha. Na labhyate, it is not obtained. You can't get it. What? Brahmatam. Brahmatam is to wander. Even if you wander from upari and adha, you go to the topmost planetary system like Brahmaloka, or adha, you go to the patala, the lower, the bottommost, upari adha. Na labhyate yad brahmatam upari adha, tallabhyate dukkhavadanyatah sukham kalena sarvatra gabhira ramhasa. What Narada Muni is telling is tallabhyate dukkhavadanyatah sukham, that in this material world, like we are not endeavoring for miseries, difficulties, sorrows, lamentations, losses, they come. No one is exception to that. Similarly, the happiness anyway is going to come because it is already destined. Kalena sarvatra gabhira ramhasa. As you know, there is a fixed quota. We have a finite time, and in that finite time, our quota of happiness and distress, they are fixed. So, like we are not endeavoring for distress or miseries, similarly, we should not endeavor for this happiness. We should only aspire for tasyaiva heta prayateto kovida. We should only aspire to be engaged in devotional service, kovida, because we are intelligent. If we are, and what is the understanding of intelligence, we will see. One who is intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor for that only, because it is not even obtainable. Brahmati upari adaha. Even if one wanders from the topmost planet to the lowermost, the bottommost planet, it is not available. As far as the sense gratification, the happiness derived from sense gratification is concerned, it is available even in the lowermost planetary systems. And it automatically comes because everybody has a finite quota of happiness and distress. That is what this verse is telling. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. Kalena sarvatra gabhira ramhasa. There is a way that things work out. There is a way things unfold in our life. Nobody wants miseries, miseries come. Nobody wants, we all want and we endeavor for that, but Bhagavatam is saying not required. Even your happiness quota is fixed. You will get a finite amount of happiness. You can't get more than that. You can't get more than a certain amount of distress. So what should we endeavor for? Don't endeavor for all these things. Endeavor for tasyaiva heta, that purposeful end. And what is that purposeful end? We will see that more again. Prabhupada elaborates each of these words beautifully in that purport. Excellent purport, actually. So let us understand. Let's first try to see what exactly this verse is. Just by hearing the translation itself, you can see how beautiful it is. Because sometimes people foolishly try, work hard, plan, do some calculations, what I can do, how I can increase my sense gratification business, how I can enjoy my life in this material world. But this verse is telling these are all futile. Don't try, don't endeavor for this. Because as far as that happiness in this, concerning our senses, the sense enjoyment, it is available even from Brahmaloka to Patala Loka. Why are you worrying about that? And this is finite, this is fixed. Kalena sarvatra gabhira, and it unfolds. Like the miseries come in our life without asking for, with unsought of. Similarly, this happiness also will come. Don't worry about that. Let us understand the purport a little more. So I'll read the translation one more time just to allow it to go through our consciousness, go through our mind, intelligence, because we have so many thoughts, so many distractions, even though we are sitting there apparently interested in hearing Bhagavatam, but still our mind, can go astray here and there. So bring back your mind and hear this purport, the translation, beautiful translation, and the purport by Prabhupada. So Prabhupada is saying, persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet, Brahmaloka, down to the lowest planet, Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time. Just as in course of time, we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them. Please pay attention again. Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined. Prabhupada is writing, actually intelligent and philosophical. Many people may claim themselves to be philosophically inclined, may claim themselves to be intelligent, may claim themselves to be very wise. But the word used here is actually intelligent and philosophically. Why it is actually intelligent, we will see. Should endeavor only for that purposeful. Then the other thing, okay, I have not highlighted. Should endeavor only for that purposeful end, which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet down to the lowest planet. Now let's see the purport, because I said each word in the verse is explained by Prabhupada in the purport. The first sentence of this purport, and this is, as you know, we all know, the first and the last sentence, something very, very important Prabhupada has to convey. The Acharya of the worldwide movement, who knows that people like us who are wandering in this material world with all materialistic pursuits, endeavor to acquire material knowledge to increase our sense gratification, caught up in this material world, thinking about our well-being, he's writing this. He's writing it in Vrindavan. But look at the sentence that Prabhupada begins the purport with. Every man, everywhere, is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. So it's a very succinct, very crisp sentence, but summarizes the state of each one of us in this material world. Every man, mind you, so there is no exception to this. You may say, no, maybe I'm different. No. Every man. You may say, okay, every man, maybe in India. No, everywhere. Not just in India, not just in America, not just in Australia, not just in Africa, wherever it is. Doesn't matter how much avenues you have for sense gratification. Every man, everywhere, is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. The greatest amount of sense enjoyment, mind you, right? Every man, everywhere is trying. The word used there is trying to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment. That is the reason being, we are not happy with whatever sense enjoyment that we have. Whatever is available to us, we are not happy with that. And it is not just me. Everyone, everywhere is trying. And we are endeavoring, because whatever we have got, we are not happy with that, to obtain the greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. My whole focus for today, maybe if I get time, I'll probably like to go further, but I want to give you this perspective from Vedic literatures, from Srimad Bhagavatam, from our acharyas, why they are telling again and again, what is wrong with sense gratification? What is the problem? In the whole world, as Prabhupada is writing, every man, everywhere, that means everybody is included in that. Who is exception to this? Every man, everywhere is trying to obtain the greatest sense gratification, greatest amount of sense enjoyment by various endeavors. Various endeavors, countless endeavors. What is wrong with this? Let us try to understand from Vedic scriptures. Because if we clearly understand, if we really know, then we will take the next step as to how I can come out of it, what I need to do. Because the word used there is ko-vidaha. Ko-vida is intelligent and philosophically inclined. I can act foolish. I can act in a manner which is ignorant, suicidal, atmaha. I can act in a manner which may give some very little, something, some temporary gratification. In long term, how difficult it is. What life, what miserable situations one has to go through. That is what Bhagavatam is trying to show. It's a naked truth. It is not just about us. It's about everybody in this material world. So let us try to understand this. Today in the morning, I was just randomly, seeing my Google, and exactly this photo came. It says it's a luxury villa, some advertisement for some luxury villa. I don't remember which company it was, but something. It's in Bangalore, by the way. luxury villa, and this is the photo which you see, right? So the moment you see a photo like this, what happens? So it says luxury villa. You can see a swimming pool. You can see a woman, probably not from India, maybe from India, I don't know, whatever it is. And she seems to be going to indulge or enjoy. And there is some way, some corner in our heart also, we feel that maybe if I have a house like this, or have a wife like this, or someone like this, and a swimming pool, and someone is playing music at the backdrop, and there is a nice, those chairs where you can have sun bath and all, what life it will be. How amazing this will be. What a beautiful life. Imagine, Saturday, Sunday, no work. Maybe I'm just surrounded by beautiful women and nice one swimming pool, and some food that I want of my choice is available, and someone is there to attend to, serve me with some melodious music at the backdrop. Wow, this is life. This is how we get enticed. And see how Bhagavatam is telling what is the problem with this. What we see and what Bhagavatam is trying us to see. It's a huge difference, huge difference. And believe me, none of us are, exception to this. We see only the things which Maya is trying to show. And we fall for it. We get attracted, we get allured, we get enticed, we get invitation to indulge. And very soon, very often, we forget the realities of life. Let's see what Bhagavatam is saying. If you see today's, the poster was Purposeful End, and there was some forest, there was a tree, that was from 15th chapter, the verse, that Aswatha tree. But very interestingly, I want you to hear this, and this is mentioned, a chapter in Bhagavatam. It's a conversation which is happening between Jadabharat and King Rahugana, right? And there is a chapter comes in Bhagavatam which is called Forest of Material Enjoyment. Just I showed you a picture. Just by the description of that, one may feel, somebody may be not too much advanced in spiritual life, may feel, yeah, it's a good proposition, and who doesn't want to have that kind of a lifestyle? But Bhagavatam shows us something very different. And let's just hear this. I want to bring you to a certain point to go and to see what Jadabharat is trying to say to King Rahugana. And then one verse we will take from that and understand the subtle nuances a little more deeply. So let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now? This is very interesting. Okay. So this is the chapter 13, which I said, further talks between King Rahugana and Jadabharat. Okay. I just want to read the summary, and I'll read few verses before I come to the verse that I wanted to show you, and then we will have some discussion. The Brahmana Jadabharat became very kind to King Rahugana. Those of you who do not know who Jadabharat is, he was King Bharata in his previous life. Because of a small, very small, tiny fault, attachment, petty attachment in his heart, he had to take birth as a deer. Even though he was extremely exalted, he has almost reached to the position of bhava, very close to Krishna Prem, but he fell down. So think of our position, how vulnerable we are. We think we are practicing for some X number of years, we've been chanting Y number of rounds, and we think we are very protected and safe. Actually, no. It's a myth. We are in this material world. Even a little tiny attachment to something, our ideas, objects, our family members, relatives, we don't know, that little attachment, just a little. Imagine for a King Bharata who's so exalted to get attached to an animal. But it happened, and he became a deer, and then he became Jadabharat, where even though he was extremely exalted and intelligent within, he was acting like a foolish madman. So this is a conversation which is happening. More you can see it in Bhagavatam, but I want you to pay attention to this conversation and what Bhagavatam is trying to tell us and show us. The Brahmana Jadabharat became very kind to King Rahugana and to disassociate him from the material world, which all of us, our position is like King Rahugana. To disassociate him from the material world, he spoke figuratively of the forest of the material world. Figuratively means it's a comparison which is made. Forest of material world. This material world is compared with a forest. We have seen Samsara Dava, Nalalidha Loka, right? So there's a forest fire. We're in that forest fire. Here also similar comparison. Figuratively of the forest of the material world. He explained that this material world is like a great forest in which one becomes entangled due to association with material life. In this forest, there are plunderers. Forest is always surrounded by these plunderers. They're, dacoits or all kinds of thieves and all this. So there are plunderers. In this forest, there are plunderers. Who are the plunderers? The six senses. Six senses include the five senses and our mind. Mana Shashtani Indriyani, six senses, including mind, as well as carnivorous animals like jackals, wolves, and lions. Wife, children, and other relatives are compared with them. Don't get judgmental. Have an open mind and hear how Bhagavatam is showing something which we all can relate to in our lives. Who are always anxious to suck the blood from the head of the family. The forest plunderers and the carnivorous blood-sucking animals combine to exploit the energy of a man within this material world. In this forest, there is also a black hole covered by grass into which one may fall. Coming into the forest and being captivated by so many material attractions. This forest is extremely beautiful, so many material attractions. One identifies himself with this material world, society, friendship, love, and family. Having lost the path and not knowing where to go, being harassed by animals and birds, one is also victimized by many desires. Harassed by animals and birds are victimized by many desires. What kind of desires? Most of the desires that we have are illicit. They're absolutely, if somebody can see one's mind and the desires that go in one's mind, one will stop associating with everybody. Thus one works very hard within the forest and wanders here and there. He works very hard within the forest and wanders here and there. He becomes captivated by temporary happiness and becomes aggrieved by so-called distress. Actually, one simply suffers in the forest from so-called happiness and distress. Sometimes he is attacked by a snake. Snake is deep sleep, ignorance. It completely makes us forget about our spiritual existence, spiritual awakening. It covers it completely. Attacked by a snake, and due to the snake bite, he loses his consciousness and becomes puzzled and bewildered about discharging his duties. Sometimes in a state of indecision, state of confusion, bewilderment. So he's telling sometimes due to a snake bite, he loses his consciousness and becomes puzzled and bewildered about discharging his duties. Sometimes he's attracted by women other than his wife. And thus he thinks he enjoys extramarital love with another woman. He's attacked by various diseases, by lamentation, and by summer and winter. Actually, so many diseases come. Every one of us we go through. As long as we have this body, nobody is exempt. But the moment we go through that painful situation and we come back to our life, things become different. We forget that painful experience. Thus one within the forest of the material world suffers the pains of material existence. Expecting to become happy, the living entity changes his position from one place to another. But actually a materialistic person within the material world is never happy. Being constantly engaged in materialistic activities is always disturbed. He forgets that one day he has to die. Although he suffers severely, being illusioned by the material energy, he still hankers after material happiness. In this way, he completely forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By hearing this from Jadabharata, Maharaj Rahugana revived his Krishna consciousness and thus benefited from Jadabharat's association. He could understand that his illusion was over and he begged pardon from Jadabharat for his misbehavior. And this was told to Maharaj Parikshit by Sukadev Goswami. It's a very, very powerful series of verses, not very long. I'll just read quickly and then I'll come to the verse that I wanted to share. Jadabharat, who had fully realized Brahman, continued, "My dear King Rahugana, the living entity wanders on the path of material world, which is very difficult for him to traverse, and he accepts repeated birth and death, being captivated by the material world under the influence of the three modes of material nature, Sattva Guna, Raja Guna, and Tamaguna, being captivated by the material world under the influence of the three modes of material nature. The living entity can see only the three fruits of activities under the spell of material nature. These fruits are auspicious, inauspicious, and mixed. He thus becomes attached to religion, economic development, and sense gratification, and the monistic theory of liberation merging with the Supreme. He works very hard day and night, exactly like a merchant who enters a forest to acquire some articles to sell later for profit. However, he cannot really achieve happiness within this material world. O King Rahugana, in this forest of material existence, there are 6 very powerful plunderers. When the conditioned soul enters the forest to acquire some material gain, the 6 plunderers misguide him. Thus, the conditioned merchant does not know how to spend his money, and it is taken away by these plunderers, like tigers, jackals, and other ferocious animals in a forest that are ready to take away a lamb from the custody of its protector, the wife and children, and enter the heart of the merchant and plunder him in so many ways. In this forest, there are dense bowers composed of thickets of bushes, grass, and creepers. In these bowers, the conditioned soul is always disturbed by cruelly biting mosquitoes, envious people. Sometimes he sees an imaginary palace in the forest, and sometimes he is bewildered by seeing a fleeting fiend or ghost which appears like a meteor in the sky. My dear king, the merchant on the forest path of material world, his intelligence victimized by home, wealth, relatives, and so forth, runs from one place to another in search of success. Sometimes his eyes are covered by the dust of a whirlwind. That is to say, in his lust, he is captivated by the beauty of his wife, especially during her menstrual period. Thus his eyes are blinded and he cannot see where to go or what he is doing. Wandering in the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul sometimes hears an invisible cricket making harsh sounds, and his ears become very much aggrieved. Sometimes his heart is pained by the sounds of owls, which are just like the harsh words of his enemies. Sometimes he takes shelter of a tree that has no fruits or flowers. He approaches such a tree due to his strong appetite, and thus he suffers. He would like to acquire water, but he is simply illusioned by a mirage, and he runs after it. Sometimes the conditioned soul jumps into a shallow river, or being short of food grains, he goes to beg food from people who are not at all charitable. Sometimes he suffers from the burning heat of household life, which is like a forest fire, and sometimes he becomes sad to have his wealth, which is as dear as life, plundered by kings in the name of heavy income taxes. Sometimes being defeated or plundered by a superior powerful agent, a living entity loses all his possessions. He then becomes very morose, and lamenting their loss, he sometimes becomes unconscious. Sometimes he imagines a great palatial city in which he desires to live happily with his family members and riches. He thinks himself fully satisfied if this is possible, but such so-called happiness continues only for a moment. Sometimes the merchant in the forest wants to climb the hills and mountains, but due to insufficient footwear, his feet are pricked by small stone fragments and by thorns on the mountain. When pricked by them, he becomes very aggrieved. Sometimes a person who is very attached to his family becomes overwhelmed with hunger, and due to his miserable condition, he becomes furious with his family members. The conditioned soul in the material forest is sometimes swallowed by a python or crushed. At such time, he is left lying in the forest like a dead person, devoid of consciousness and knowledge. Sometimes other poisonous snakes bite him. Being blind to his consciousness, he falls down into dark well of hellish life with no hope of being rescued. Sometimes, in order to have a little insignificant sex enjoyment, one searches after debauched women. In this attempt, one is insulted and chastised by the women's kinsmen. This is like going to take honey from a beehive and being attacked by the bees. Sometimes, after spending lots of money, one may acquire another woman for some extra sense enjoyment. Unfortunately, the object of sense enjoyment, the woman, is taken away or kidnapped by another debauchee. Sometimes the living entity is busy counteracting the natural disturbances of freezing cold, scorching heat, strong wind, excessive rainfall, and so forth. When he is unable to do so, he becomes very unhappy. Sometimes he is cheated in business transactions, one after another. In this way, by cheating, living entities create enmity among themselves. On the forest path of material existence, sometimes a person is without wealth, and due to this, does not have a proper home, bed, or sitting place, nor proper family enjoyment. He therefore goes to beg money from others. But when his desires are not fulfilled by begging, he wants to borrow or steal the property of others. Thus, he is insulted in society. Due to monetary transactions, relationships become strained and end in enmity. Sometimes the husband and wife walk on the path of material progress, and to maintain their relationship, they work very hard. Sometimes, due to scarcity of money or due to diseased conditions, they are embarrassed and almost die. My dear king, on the forest path of material life, first a person is bereft of his father and mother, and after their death, he becomes attached to his newly born children. In this way, he wanders on the path of material progress and is eventually embarrassed. Nonetheless, no one knows how to get out of this, even up to the moment of death. There were and are many political and social heroes who have conquered enemies of equal power, yet due to their ignorance and believing that the land is theirs, they fight one another and lay down their lives in battle. They are not able to take up the spiritual path accepted by those in the renounced order. Although they are big heroes and political leaders, they cannot take to the path of spiritual realization. Sometimes the living entity in the forest of material existence takes shelter of creepers and desires to hear the chirping of the birds in those creepers. Being afraid of roaring lions in the forest, he makes friends with cranes and herons and vultures. Being cheated by them, the living entity in the forest of the material world tries to give up the association of the so-called yogis, swamis, and incarnations and come to the association of real devotees. See, this is where I wanted to come. Cheated by them, the living entity in the forest of the material world tries to give up the association of the so-called yogis, swamis, incarnations, and come to the association of real devotees, but due to misfortune, he cannot follow the instructions of the spiritual master or advanced devotees. Therefore, he gives up their company and again returns to the association of monkeys who are simply interested in sense gratification and women. He derives satisfaction by associating with sense gratifiers and enjoying sex and intoxication. In this way, he spoils his life simply by indulging in sex and intoxication. Looking into the faces of other sense gratifiers, he becomes forgetful and thus approaches death. When the living entity becomes exactly like a monkey jumping from one branch to another, he remains in the tree of household life without any profit but sex. Thus, he is kicked by his wife just like the he-ass. Unable to gain release, he remains helplessly in that position. Sometimes he falls victim to an incurable disease, which is like falling into a mountain cave. He becomes afraid of death, which is like the elephant in the back of that cave, and he remains stranded, grasping at the twigs and branches of a creeper. O killer of enemies, Maharaj Rahugana, if the conditioned soul somehow or other gets out of his dangerous position, he again returns to his home to enjoy sex life, for that is the way of attachment. Thus, under the spell of the Lord's material energy, he continues to loiter in the forest of material existence. He does not discover his real interest even at the point of death. Let me share the PPT and bring you to what I wanted to share. So this forest of material enjoyment, you see those creepers, there are some reliefs, and there are, how dangerous this position is. But unfortunately, even after coming in association with devotees, sometimes people still become forgetful. Even after coming in touch with a pure devotee spiritual master who's trying to show this path, still people become, forgetful of their real position. So this is the verse that I wanted to share with you, which we just read. Atah kathanchit sa vimukta apadah punascha sartham pravishati arindama adhavni amushin ajaya niveshito brahman janodhyapi naveda kashchana. O killer of enemies, Maharaj Rahugana, the conditioned soul somehow or other gets out of his dangerous position, he again returns to his home to enjoy sex life. For that is the way of attachment. Thus, under the spell of the Lord's material energy, he continues to loiter in the forest of material existence. He does not discover his real interest even at the point of death. Mind you, nobody really understands what his self-interest is. This is what exactly that purposeful end. And it is very easy to become forgetful of this material world, the real situation, who I am, what is my position, why am I suffering, why there is so much of struggle, because the material energy of the Lord makes us look this desert to be like an ocean where there is only enjoyment. How, why, how it happens? We've been seeing, and if you read this entire chapter of the forest of material enjoyment, you see how difficult and how relatable to all of us. Yet how we are forgetful of our real situation and how we get into some kind of a thing, another word. I want to, because I know there's always, shortage of time, I want to leave you with one very powerful, important verse from Bhagavad Gita. Very, very important. We know this verse, but I want you to hear this in connection with this verse that we are trying to discuss in the first line of the purport. Before I do that, there is, okay, that has come already, but I will come to that. I wanted to share this one picture with you, which probably is very apt when we are trying to talk about material sense gratification. The scriptures or the acharyas, they don't deny that there is no happiness here. There is happiness. There is some amount of happiness. Otherwise, not everybody, everyone, everywhere would have not tried to trying to increase to the greatest sense gratification. There is some happiness. There is. But that happiness which is there in this material world is compared to a drop of water in the forest. Imagine a long, tireful, exhausting journey in a desert, completely parched and thirsty. You are looking for water. Somewhere I should get some water which can quench my thirst. Somebody comes and gives you just a drop of water. That is the happiness in this material world. Very beautifully, Prabhupada quotes this verse often. This is by a Vaishnava poet by name Vidyapati. He says, very, very nice verse. This verse is actually, Tatala saikate bari bindu sama, sutta mita ramani samaje, tohe bisari mana tahe samarpala, aba majhu habo kon kaje. Tatala saikate bari bindu sama. Tatala saikate bari bindus, one drop of water in a desert. So the translation of this is there in KK songs. You can see this. Oh Lord, completely forgetting you. Tohe bisari mana, I have forgotten you, and I have offered my mind unto the society of women, children, and friends. But this experience has been just like offering a drop of water unto the burning hot sands of the beach. How can I possibly be relieved of this great misery? Tatala saikate bari bindu sama, sutamita ramani samaja. Actually, what the external energy of the Lord, what it does is it nicely packages. Very beautiful, wonderful packaging. Like I was showing that villa, but that, there is a swimming pool, there is someone who's playing, there is a person who's playing some music, and there is a woman, there's a beautiful lady who's available. So it's a package. So that's why this verse is saying, Sutta Mita Ramani Samaje. Sutta Mita Ramani Samaje means, it is a nice package. You'll have like society, women, children, and all this so wonderfully, attractively it is presented that one gets caught up by that. But it is Tatala Saikate Bari Bindu Saman. This is just one drop of happiness. Before we close our time together, this verse you should remember. Of course, you all know this. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text number 45. So this verse is, all of us we know, 44, okay, 44. Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya aparata chetasam vyavasayatmika buddhi samadho na vidhiyate. Why this verse is so important? Because we know this Bhogeshwarya Prasaktanam Taya Pahrata Chetasam Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Samadho na vidhiyate. Actually, the entire thing that we discussed so far, this forest of material enjoyment, if you want to really summarize this verse actually captures it. It has, pay attention to this. It captures. Sometimes we, because of our familiarity with the verse, we don't pay attention, but it has something very, very important. You see, the verse that I was showing you, what is this? Jadabharat's instruction. Atah kathanchit sabimukta apada. He says, somehow or other, the living entity, if he gets out of danger, so somebody may be sick, somebody may be going through some kind of a situation, admitted to hospital, some difficult situations in life, somehow or other we may get better, get released from that. Then ideally we should remember our painful existence, the suffering, and come back to our senses. But there is an obstacle, and that is Bhogeshwarya Prasaktana Taya Pahrata Chetasa. This verse is very nice because Krishna himself says that those who are attracted to Bhoga, Aishwarya, Bhoga and Aishwarya, opulences and material sense gratification. Bhoga and Aishwarya. Bhoga Aishwarya Prasaktanam. Saktanam means engrossed, and Prasaktanam is deeply engrossed. We are deeply engrossed. Then we are following the hedonistic philosophy, right? They say it is hedonistic philosophy. Eat, drink, and be merry. We think that now that I have become all right, I have come out of that situation, maybe from disease, maybe from some painful financial conditions, whatever it is, I have come back. Now I'm perfectly fit. I'm well again. I'm ready to eat, drink, and be merry. So start eating and drinking and whatnot. And again, the same thing repeats again and again. That is why apada, these difficulties do come again and again in the material life, because we are carrying the body, which is full of defects. And the biggest problem is our own mind. Mind really transfers our body to the hellish condition. That is our mind. So actually, we are not sane at all. Sanity is completely impossible. And because the sanity is absent, the body is never in order. That is particularly true in this modern age, in this Kali Yuga, when we don't have any attraction to the transcendence. We actually don't have any. That's why there is a beautiful verse. I wanted to share that with you. In a moment, I'll share that. This comes in Chaitanya Charitamrita. That how we don't have a natural attraction for Krishna, and we are so deep-rooted for sense gratification, and everyone everywhere is trying for this. So day by day, as we go for that, get attracted to the sense gratification, then we are getting caught up in this material whirlpool. Prabhupada uses this word, material whirlpool. So Prabhupada gives this example. If you fall into some kind of a muddy lake, which is full of mud, then no matter how the conditioned soul struggles to get up, the more he struggles, the more he goes down. And this is how we are all behaving. We don't come down. We just don't think I am going to die any moment. That's what Prabhupada is writing. We don't think we are going to die any moment. A person who is 14 years old is 16 years old. He thinks maybe he's got 70, 80 years to go. Or I am 20, I have so many years to go. Really, it's actually a pathetic situation. And this is why sometimes difficulty might be over. And, it appears like, the difficult situation is over, but then again, we become forgetful of our own this thing, and we go back to the same rut. Bhogeshwarya Prasaktanam, that is our description. And Krishna is telling this, attracted to those who are unlimitedly attracted to sense gratification and opulences. We wanted to have all opulences for sense gratification only. That is what our modern civilization is all about. Full of attempts how we can increase Bhoga and Aishwarya. And that is why Bhagavatam, Janatagha Viplavo. It can, all our endeavors to create this, the so-called materialistic happy life, it can bring a revolution in this, basic idea of Bhogeshwarya Prasaktana. This sense gratification from this verse, if you see the most important thing, even if you forget everything else, and you please go back and read the Forest of Material Enjoyment to understand our real situation and how this is such an illusory thing and just a nice packaging. Ramani Sutta, whatever that verse, that line, it's telling, it's how nice packaging. The most important thing in this verse is this sense gratification steals our intelligence. Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya apahrata chetasa. Apahrata, apaharan, they say. It's stolen. Intelligence is completely stolen by the sense gratificatory interaction. One may not know, naively, innocently, maybe doing something, but what we don't realize is our intelligence gets completely stolen. In one line, Krishna gives the dangerous situation. In the same line, he gives the effect of it. This is Bhagavad Gita. How can we leave Bhagavad Gita for a single second? Bhogeshwarya prasaktanam taya aparata chetasa. And then once our intelligence is stolen by the sense gratificatory activities, what is happening? Vyavasayatmika buddhi, resolute determination to go to Krishna, completely vanishes. Samadho na vidhiyate. It is very difficult. That is the message of this verse. Very, very difficult. Opulence actually rekindles our enjoyment propensity. When we have a lot of opulence, it rekindles. Because we don't have any idea of the transcendence, and especially Western countries or advanced countries or people who are there, they have more avenues. Opulence is there. And as you grow, the money is going to flow to your pocket. So money, the definition of bhoga is money without Krishna. Definitely it will lead you to intoxication and whatnot. And always, drinking wine or whatever, those bad habits start with some wine, this thing, small, let's say I want to drink Coca-Cola. And there was one devotee who was telling he's not able to give up. He's addicted to drinking Coke. Harmless, right? Appears harmless. But as soon as you start Coke or something, slowly you're addicted to having so many cans. And sometimes there will be a propensity, let me take beer. One glass of beer at the beginning. Beer, after all, not so harmful. Tastes very bitter, but whatever it is, people who take it for the first time, they make all kinds of faces. Somehow you swallow it. And then you get attracted, and then money, Aishwarya is there. And when Aishwarya is used in the wrong direction, what happens is, intelligence is completely stolen. Doesn't matter, who you are. Sense gratification is so powerful. However, the person may be educated or otherwise, but his intelligence is completely stolen, and he falls down back into the material whirlpool, which is very temporary and full of misery. It's a whirlpool. So, and whirlpool goes round and round, and it's not easy to come out of this. No matter whether you are an expert swimmer or whoever you may be, you can't swim straight. It's a whirlpool, and you can't just come out. So this is what is the most important thing, that apahrata. Apahrata is, imagine like a flight which is hijacked. So intelligence is hijacked. The plane was in normal course. It was going from maybe India to America, and in between it is hijacked because of the hijackers. So they are more powerful, and the plane loses its intelligence. It goes to the wrong direction because of that. That is how our intelligence is hijacked. Intelligence is there. Intelligence means it is meant for Krishna, but it gets hijacked. I want to close the session with two verses from Bhagavatam. I'll say this one. This one I was telling, Maya Mugdha Jivera Nahi Swata Krishna Gyan Jivera Kripaya Koila Krishna Veda Purana. Maya Mugdha Jivera. Maya Mugdha, enchanted by the illusory energy. Nahi Swata Krishna Gyan. Naturally, nobody gets attracted to Krishna consciousness. It's very different, because the conditioned living entity is so addicted, conditioned to this bhoga and aishwarya, to enjoy the senses. Nahi Swata Krishna. Maya Mugdha Jivera Nahi Swata Krishna Gyan Jivera Kripaya Koila Krishna Veda Purana. For that, but out of causeless mercy, Lord Krishna compiled the Vedic literature and it supplements the Puranas. This is Bhagavatam. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita. And one last thing before we close is this verse from Bhagavatam, a very interesting verse. It comes in the 11th canto, 26th chapter, 34th verse. Santo dishanti chakshumsi bahirarka samuttitaha devata bandhava santaha santa atmaham evacha. This verse says, Santo dishanti chakshumsi. We want to see material things with our eyes, with our gross material eyes. We need sun. Without the presence of the sun, or in some way the energy from the sun, which is maybe converted to electricity or something, without that we can't see anything. We are blind. When there is sunrise, bahir arkaha samuttitaha. Samuttita means completely the sun is risen. Then we can see things as they are. But this verse of Bhagavatam is saying, if we want to develop another vision, if we want to change our perspective of looking at this world, associate with devotees. Santo dishanti chakshumsi. They give another vision to understand, to see what things are. Santo dishanti chakshumsi. Bahirarka. Arka is sun. Bahirarka samuttita. Outer gross world we can see through our material eyes. But to understand the complexities of this material world and the illusory nature of this material happiness, or the temporariness of our material life in this material world, one has to associate with devotees. Santo dishanti chakshumsi. Translation is, my devotees bestow divine eyes, whereas the sun allows only external light. Mind you, this verse is spoken by Krishna to Uddhava just before his departure, the final instruction. Whereas the sun allows only external sight, and that when it is risen in the sky, my devotees are one's real worshipable deities and real family. They're one's own self, and ultimately they're non-different from me. This is Krishna's instruction to Uddhava, final instruction, very important to remember. Only when we associate with devotees, otherwise materialistic people can give you so many materialistic ideas and vision of enjoying this material world. This knowledge will not come. Now, so far what we discussed in today's session is how futile is the sense enjoyment, and how by being attached to this bhoga and aishwarya, our chetasa, intelligence gets stolen. The next class, it will be a continuation of this verse. We will see what exactly that knowledge is. Because knowledge, everybody is saying they have knowledge. We go to school, we go to colleges, we go to universities, we do so many degrees, we try to acquire knowledge through different things. What is that knowledge which Krishna is telling? Bhagavad Gita very beautifully describes what transcendental knowledge is, what it does. What are the symptoms of a person who has got transcendental knowledge? We have seen that. We will see that again in this line. And we will try to understand how this is different from this materialistic, so-called materialistic knowledge. What it does when somebody has got that transcendental knowledge, how he is able to identify that purposeful end and endeavors for that. I'll stop here and see if you have any questions or comments. Well, good to see you, Raghavan, again. That Raghavan or Ramya Mataji? Raghavan, are you there? Okay, so if no question, no comments, we will stop here and see this wonderful knowledge shared by Narada Muni, beautifully captured the essence by Prabhupada in this wonderful commentaries, and see how we can learn and apply it in our lives. Jagranthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.